Hello and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion, your channel exclusively reviewing and previewing new and forthcoming releases. In this edition, we'll be focusing on a forthcoming title. That's Vittorio Di Sica's Shoeshine, coming to the collection soon on 4K UHD. Vittorio Di Sica has quite a few films in the collection, including his classic masterpiece from 1948, Bicycle Thieves, as well as Marigold Milan and Umberto D. Vittorio Di Sica was an Italian neorealist filmmaker and the winner of 4 Academy Awards for his films, among which were his 2 films, Bicycle Thieves and Shoeshine, which actually helped to establish the permanent Best Foreign Film category at the Oscars, now known as Best International Picture. He was given an Oscar himself as an actor for his role as Major Rinaldi in Charles Vidor's adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's novel A Farewell to Arms. His acting, in fact, was considered to be the highlight of that film. His 1947 film Shoeshine, or Shusha, is often regarded as his first and slightly flawed masterpiece. The film follows 2 shoeshine boys who get into trouble with the police after they try and find money to buy a horse. Now, the plot appears on the surface to be quite simple, but duly enshrined as a founding work of neorealism, can Vittorio Di Sica's Shoeshine now be seen outside of its historical context as essentially a pretty good boys' prison melodrama? Well, we're going to find out. Now, while it may utilise Roman streets and slums, and indeed outlying locations with more grit than a Warner Brothers juvenile delinquent vehicle of the 1930s, the travail of post-war Shoeshine boys and buddies Pasquale, that's the sensitive Franco Interlenghi, and Giuseppe, feisty Rinaldo Smordoni, jibe pretty well with the troubles of the dead-end kids. Now, notwithstanding the veracity of the American-occupied urban locations that he captures on film, Di Sica doesn't innovate or subvert our expectations in the manner of the contemporaneous war trilogy of Roberto Rossellini, for instance. And his plotting with principal screenwriter Cesare Zavattini doesn't rise above the level of a vivid potboiler that's a mild bent for muckraking. After the jauntily scored opening, a sun-dappled farm idyll with Pasquale racing the horse the boys aim to purchase, Di Sica's urchins are exploited by hoods, unwittingly abetting Giuseppe's adult brother in the robbery of a fortune teller, and labelled violent by nature by overworked brusque correction officials. They never really have a chance, and though this determinism is rooted in the chaos of 1945 Rome, more common tropes of lower-class struggle prevail, save, of course, for a few scenes. Slum dwellers, for instance, living in hallways, the fencing of black market blankets that lands the kids behind bars, and talk of the vanished or dead parents a half-decade of warfare have taken from their generation. Now, Di Sica and Zavattini would refine their narrative art 2 years later, of course, with their celebrated film Bicycle Thieves, a more jolting and original mix of street grit and pathos. But Shoeshine is undermined by the familiarity of elements like the stern warden, set against the compassionate prison doctor. Better a vagrant than dead, he mutters to a colleague of a sickly inmate. The archetypal bad boys, bespectacled brainiac, sneering cell block leader, you've seen it before, or the hard-cut, lice-ridden Pasquale and Giuseppe, who are scratching in their cells to their criminal mentors dining out on sweetbreads and steak. Even in staging a jailbreak and fire during a communal movie screening before the film's tear-jerking finale, Di Sica applies a little too much standard polish to this tragedy of victimised waifs and their neglected and curtailed childhoods. The film focuses on two boys to represent those suffering classes of the time, Pasquale Maggi, Franco Interlenghi, and Giuseppe Filippucci, Rinaldo Smordoni. Both were non-professional actors recruited to enact the true story of two other less attractive Shoeshine boys. So far from the film being simply a portrait of life, though, Di Sica would in fact go through as many as 39 takes before getting what he wanted from his non-professionals. Now, the movie goes from friendship to murder. It begins with the bright, joyous sequence of the opening horse race, and then goes to the darkly poetic and operatically tragic final scene. In between, the boys are pulled further and further apart by their separation in prison, by the guards, by Giuseppe's family, pitting them one against the other, and by the deceptions of the police and the jailers, and also by their fellow prisoners, and by Giuseppe's lawyers, trying to make Pasquale guilty to set his client free. Now, by contrast, there are a few women in the film, but as you'd expect, they are victims of this brutal and deceptive male regime. They are few and far between in this all-male atmosphere. We've got the fortune teller, who is robbed, the go-between, who helps inform Giuseppe's family of his arrest, and the prostitutes at Panza's table, whom he orders about. But above all, the very emblem of woman in the film is in fact Giuseppe's mother, grieving as both her sons are arrested and sent to prison, and she really doesn't know when they're going to come back. Now, the guards get the truth out of Pasquale by pretending that they are beating his friend, and the lawyer fakes Giuseppe's defence, and the guards at the prison lie and steal. All these pretences and deceptions form an ironic contrast to the total realism of the film's style. And the style is, it's honest in its picture of dishonesty. Now, the film has a film within the film feel, the newsreel of the war in the Pacific, for instance. The surrounding story is fictional, of course, but that is real. Although sponsored by priests, male, of course, it represents the very opposite of the bonding that is in this film virtue. The newsreel shows battles, invasions, and explosions, and killing, the extreme of war, but totally real form of this male world. During the commotion, we get another alternative to bonding. That's the escape, organised by the bully Archangeli, played by Bruno Ortenzi. Now, the escape splits the cohesive group within the prison and leads Pasquale to betray his friend's plan for flight, namely the horse that plays so prominent a role in the movie. So why did the boys choose a horse? It's featured in both the opening and the closing sequences, and its name is Bersagliere, a soldier in an elite Italian regiment, something these Italian boys can be proud of. At one point, Pasquale and Giuseppe ride their horse proudly through the streets of Rome, and they're looking down at the admiring Shoeshine boys. Shoeshine becomes then much more than a realistic picture of the harshness of life in Italy after the Second World War. It is that, surely, but it is much, much more. It's a bitter study of growing up. It shows the way we humans can and do grow the easy friendship of children into the deadly enmity of adults. Now let's look at the restoration. The film was originally shot in black and white, and it's in location in Rome, and it's a masterclass in minimalist cinematography. The 4K UHD transfer preserves the grain and the texture that defines the film's historical and emotional character. The fine detail is in the textures, all from the gritty, worn-down streets of post-war Rome right through to the subtle emotions that pass over the actors' faces, and that's captured with stunning clarity in this restoration. The shadows and light play a pivotal role in neorealism, of course, and in this 4K restoration, the dynamic range is noticeably improved. The stark contrasts between light and dark, which mirror the dualities of hope and despair in the characters' lives, have never been more vivid. And there's a rawness in the close-up shots, of Pasquale and Giuseppe's faces, shots that convey so much with so little, and that is showcased in stunning detail in this 4K restoration. Additionally, the depth of field in wide shots where the cityscape and dilapidated buildings loom over the boys, and that draws attention to the oppressive environment in which they live. The 4K restoration brings out the texture of the environment without compromising the film's original sense of realism. The film's blend of documentary style realism and poetic composition that feels more vibrant than ever. Now, as well as being a director, of course, Vittorio Di Sica was also a renowned actor in Italy. He appeared in countless films, from Clemenceau Affair back in 1913 as only a child of 12, to his last appearance on film in L'Oro, a TV movie in 1976. Now, the 4K restoration of Shoeshine was completed at l'Immagine Ritrovata laboratory using the best surviving original elements. It was restored in 4K by the Film Foundation and Fondazione Cineteca di Bologna at l'Immagine Ritrovata in association with Orium SA Restoration. Funding was provided by the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation. New 4K digital restoration undertaken by the Film Foundation and the Cineteca di Bologna with uncompressed mono soundtrack. Shoeshine 70 from 2016, a documentary by Mimo Verdeshka, made to mark the film's 70th anniversary. New programme on Shoeshine and Italian neorealism featuring film scholars Paola Bonifacio and Catherine O'Rourke. Radio broadcast from 1946 featuring director Vittorio Di Sica. Trailer and an essay by film scholar David Forgags and Shoeshine Joe, a 1945 photo documentary by Di Sica himself. Cover art is by F. Ron Miller. A devastating portrait of economic struggle made all the more haunting by its childlike perspective. Shoeshine stands as one of the defining achievements of post-war Italian filmmaking. The film has a running time of 92 minutes, it's in black and white, and has an aspect ratio of 1:37:1, and it releases in the collection on 4K UHD and Blu-ray on Tuesday the 19th of August as Spine 1272. Incidentally, the film inspired the comic book series Shoeshine, which ran from 1949 to 1956, and if you haven't seen much of Di Sica's work, why don't you take a look at one of his other films in the collection? I would recommend checking out Miracle in Milan from 1951. If you want to see more about that, there'll be a short close-up edition on that coming soon to the channel, as I featured it in a previous edition. Next time on Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be featuring a Janus contemporary title once again. That's Vermiglio, directed by Maura Del Pero. So until then, from me as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.